Talofa lava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Elisha Foon. Coming up, a climate advocate vows to hold New Zealand's new government to account in protecting the Pacific Ocean. Also, food security in Tikopia Island in the Solomon Islands is a major concern a month on from cyclone Lola. And later,
you have all this roundness on film, and that's the most amazing thing.
Pacifica stars shine in Taika Waititi's latest film. As the New Zealand government finalises its policies within its new coalition, issues around ocean protection and climate change are front of mind for many Pacific climate advocates. New Zealand has been in support of a new global target to protect 30% of our ocean by 2030. However, under a national-led government, New Zealand plans to lift the ban on oil and gas exploration, something that has many organisations championing the environment horrified. I spoke with Dr. Kayla Kingdom-Bebb, Chief Executive of Worldwide Nature Fund, known as WWF New Zealand, about how she plans to hold the new government to account.
New Zealand we have the 5th largest ocean territory on the planet. It's 14 times larger than our landmass. And historically, New Zealand did used to be a global leader in ocean conservation in the 1970s when we created the Marine Reserves Act. But globally speaking, we are joint last place in terms of the actual protection of our ocean environment. So we currently protect less than 1% of our ocean territory, and that's about the same amount as China and Russia. Not the greatest bedfellows, especially when you consider that most New Zealanders live within 4 kilometres of the coast. It's worth about $7.4 billion to our marine economy, and every second breath we take is oxygen that's supplied by the ocean.
With the incoming government, what would you like to see from them?
Well, at WWF, we were really heartened to see the National Environmental Manifesto, which I think is called the Blueprint for a Healthy Environment. There's a suite of commitments in there around ocean conservation, which are really encouraging, actually. Nationals committed to, within this next term, progressing marine protected areas reform, which is the legal framework by which we can create new marine protected areas, which we desperately need to do because the Marine Reserves Act is now wildly out of date. They've also committed to progressing the new marine reserves in the Hauraki Gulf through the sea change process, those down in southeast Otago, and also revisiting the Kermadec Rangitahua Ocean Sanctuary, all of which are critical interventions we need to stop the decline of our ocean health in New Zealand. In terms of the ocean dynamic in the Pacific, we know that a healthy Pacific, Te Moana Nui Akiwa, is so important to the well-being of all Pacific states, New Zealand included. And with respect to the implementation of the 30 by 30 commitment, this is the commitment that's spun out of the Global Biodiversity Framework and the UN High Seas Treaty to protect 30% of our oceans by 2030. It is really important to human health. We're not just talking about biodiversity in the deep reaches of the ocean. We know that what happens on the high seas actually affects the health of the marine and coastal ecosystems closer to home. And species like whales and tuna and sharks and turtles do not pay any heed to the lines drawn on maps by humans. So my focus in the next year is going to be pushing the New Zealand government really, really hard to do what they need to do to live up to that commitment.
For people listening to this and for our Pacific audience, some of the big kind of topics and issues like fossil fuels and seabed mining, what would you suggest people do in terms of education?
Well, there's a lot of good information out there, and there's heaps of it on the WWF website if you're interested. I think there's a lot of misconceptions out that are often peddled by industry, unfortunately. So particularly in New Zealand, for example, there are strong lobbies suggesting that marine protected areas are not good for commercial and recreational fisheries. And factually, that is incorrect. For the last 2 decades, we've had really strong research globally that strongly suggests that highly protected offshore marine protected areas are great for food security, i.e. they are good for commercial fisheries because they allow those fishery stocks that have been overfished a chance to recover. And they're also really important to enable us to adapt to our changing climate. We know that the best antidote to climate change, both in terms of mitigation and adaptation, is healthy wild places. So the notion that's being peddled that MPAs offshore are bad for fisheries is just categorically untrue. And there's lots of peer-reviewed research out there to suggest that is not the case. In terms of the plastics, there's a great civil society movement, including throughout the Pacific, that highlight, the myriad drawbacks of plastic pollution, both in terms of human health and also in terms of what it's doing to our marine ecosystems and species. I think, when you're looking at a small developing island state, economic development is really important across the board. Some of the goals in terms of the Pacific Islands Forum leaders is collective development and raising up people's incomes and giving them choices and opportunities in their lives. And economic development's a really crucial part of that. So I can understand the impulse and the instinct to want to explore those resources. We would say, and the evidence suggests that, deep sea mining is not without quite a lot of risk. And quite frankly, because the deep reaches of the ocean are so remote, we just don't know kind of what the impacts on biodiversity will be down there, although we do know that it's incredibly damaging to, the benthic environment that takes millennia to recover. We would say, a precautionary approach is warranted, and we strongly support the moratorium that's being advocated by a huge number of Pacific Island states, New Zealand included.
What would lifting the ban on offshore oil and gas exploration mean for New Zealand and the Pacific?
I think it would be a travesty, actually. Our former Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, did a lot of advocacy at a recent APEC meeting around removing subsidies on fossil fuels. And internationally, New Zealand's, can rightly be proud of the fact that we've banned offshore oil and gas. We're going to COP28, the next climate conference in December this year, where we're doing a global stock take, where the global community is going to be taking stock about how we're going in terms of reaching our Paris commitments. And across the board, all of the scientific reports that have been issued say that the window of opportunity for us to meet the commitment to halt warming to 1.5 degrees is slipping out of our hands. And we know absolutely that keeping to 1.5 degrees of warming cannot and does not provide for more fossil fuel exploration. Full stop. It just doesn't. Realistically, I just think it's a shame, and it's actually a bit ridiculous that New Zealand would be considering reversing that ban at this juncture in time.
Going forward, how does the Pacific, where do they stand on the world stage when it comes to COP28?
I certainly hope so. I mean, my own lived experience has been that the voice of the Pacific, when it's as a collective of small island states and in concert with Australia and Aotearoa, when we're able to tautoko, is actually very strong. And the Pacific is at the forefront. We're at the front line of climate change, and we're at the front line of plastic pollution, and we're at the front line of biodiversity loss as well. And when these countries come together and speak with one collective voice, it's actually incredibly powerful. And we've seen that, in a host of different negotiations around Ramsar, which is a wetlands convention, and the Convention on the Trade of Endangered Species, and the Global Biodiversity Framework. When the Pacific comes together to advocate for outcomes it believes in, it's actually a powerful voice. And we're hoping to see that at the upcoming plastics negotiations this week. But also in terms of climate change, we know the Pacific voice is really important. So, looking forward to seeing good progress on loss and damage, particularly at COP28.
Food security is a major concern in Tikopia Island in the far east of the Solomon Islands after severe tropical cyclone Lola destroyed all the island's crops almost a month ago. Fresh reserves and aid has arrived by boat, but Kinsley Manu, who is from the island, fears it won't last long. Caleb Fotheringham spoke to him about the situation.
And people are asking around now that they only got 1 or 2 meals a day. And they said that they were lucky that the patrol boat are arriving on time.
Wow, that's pretty full on. Did the petrol boat bring food?
Yeah, there's around 300 bags of rice, and a few relatives in Honiara, they sent a little bit of rice and sugar and that, yeah.
Will that keep them going for a bit?
No, I don't think so. I think it's by mid of maybe first week or second of next month, they need a supply straight away. Yeah.
Have they been told more boats will come with more food?
Currently, I'm working with the NDMO. I got an update yesterday from the NDMO, and they said that the Australian Navy is available now. And, I think expected to leave. Loading should be on the 24th this month.
Were people warned of the cyclone before it came?
From an interview with Scott, what they said, They will update that the cyclone is out in the Duff Islands outside. That's in Timor. But on the 22, the cyclone hit. That they didn't prepare because there is no message that the cyclone is going that way.
Obviously, food stocks are running very low. What's the situation with people's homes?
There's a lot of damage. People, because they didn't prepare food. So because the cyclone was arriving there on 22 last month, and around 7 p.m. or something like that, that's when the cyclone hit. But it's already dark. People didn't prepare for that. Yeah.
What's the mood on the island right now?
People are struggling from still trying to get up with the what happened, and I think they really need our help out from the outside there.
France's new ambassador to the Pacific says her focus will be on peace and freedom for the region. Veronique Roger-Lacan has spent just under a month in the position and met with various leaders and delegates at the Pacific Islands Forum. Lydia Lewis spoke with her about what she hopes to achieve.
I don't hope to achieve anything. I hope to spend 3 or 4 years in interacting with everyone in the region, including our French territories, so as to contribute to keeping this area, this blue continent, as an area of peace, freedom and security.
How did you find your first Pacific Islands Forum? Who did you meet with?
We met with, I think, most government leaders of the PIF. And also we met with the partners for dialogue, partners for development. I met with my counterparts, ambassadors or special envoys for the Pacific from Singapore, from EU, from the US, from everywhere, Japan.
Does France see itself as more than a dialogue partner? Are there talks to try and escalate to being a member?
No, they are not actually. But we see ourselves as maybe not a member of the forum, but as a member, as a Pacific state because of our 3 territories.
And on the sidelines of the Pacific Islands Forum, France strengthened its climate actions. Can you tell me what exactly has been announced and what will be strengthened?
So we announced first within the Pacific Partner Action and Commitment Engagement, this high-level proposal that the PIF leaders adopted. We have announced that we will dedicate financial resources to help carry the voices of the Pacific leaders on the matters of climate change and biodiversity through the Climate Champions program of the PIF. And we will organize a specific conference for PIF members ahead of the UNOC 3, this United Nations Oceans Conference that we are organizing in Nice in 2025. And we really want to have, in addition to the 5 priorities, which are specific UN priorities, we have also our own priorities, and focusing on the Pacific is one of our priorities. It's very important. And of course, we will not think for the Pacific leaders. We hope that the Pacific leaders can take this opportunity on board to have this UN conference ahead and use this opportunity to enhance their own commitment to the UN targets, which are first the BBNG, the Global Biodiversity Framework, and we hope that by then everybody will have, we will have gained 60 ratifications so that the treaty can enter into force. Then we want to have a legally binding instrument to end plastic pollution, and I understand that it's an issue in the Pacific. Then we also want to strengthen the fight against illegal fishing, decarbonize maritime transport, and raise awareness on the risk around deep sea mining. So those are the 5 UN priorities. And in addition to those 5 UN priorities, we have our 3 own priorities, among which focusing on the Pacific Blue Continent priorities.
Is France against deep sea mining and why?
Yeah, France is entering into a perspective of total ban on deep sea mining. So it will be actually its position. It's the position of President Macron and Minister Berville. And for us, the reason why we have this position is because we have started some deep sea mining in the 80s, and we stopped because we realized, through our Institute for Oceanic Research, it's called IFREMER. We did some research, and now the first findings are being published, and it's clear and proved and evidence that the environment that was destroyed with this deep sea mining at the time has not been reconstituted. I'm not sure whether I'm clear in English, but I hope that you understand what I mean.
So what is your message then to the Cook Islands?
Yes, we discussed, and of course we see that the positions are very strong in Cook Islands, in Tonga, for example, in Nauru, and maybe less strong but still clear in the Fijis, if I remember well. And of course, as the PIF leaders say, sovereignty is sovereignty, and they do whatever they want in their EEZ. But what we argue is that the ocean is even more sensitive in terms of borders, because there are no borders in the ocean. So if you destroy the environment somewhere, it has some effects in the whole of the ocean. And also, if you have plastic pollution somewhere, it will end up, if you have it in the Atlantic Ocean, at some point it ends up in the bellies of the poor fishes in the Pacific Ocean, because everything is circulating very much. So of course, deep sea mining is the right, for the time being, in the law, is the right of everyone, but we advocate for sharing of experiences and science and exploration. And this is actually what the PIF leaders agreed on, that they would continue to explore and then come back to the issue.
As France is such a staunch advocate for the environment, does France support a phase out or a phase down of fossil fuels?
France is engaged, yes, in this, absolutely. And you know that we are a civilian nuclear power, and we advocate, yes, a phase down on fossil fuels.
Why a phase down, not a phase out?
This is a big, negotiation with the whole French system, because there is still lots of infrastructures which rely on fuel, and we have to phase down little by little.
And you met with the new French Polynesia leader, Moetai Brotherson, who is pro-independence. Was it your first meeting with him?
Yes, it was my first meeting. And I'm planning, of course, my post is a regional one, and I'm planning to travel to the French territories, but also to everywhere in the South Pacific. But yes, it was my first meeting with him.
How did it go? What was discussed?
Well, it went very well. We discussed the issues that we have for the next 3 months. So we discussed the PIF, the priorities, our respective priorities in the PIF. We discussed our cooperation for the next 3 months. We discussed the next SPDMM in Nouméa. And we discussed the UNOC conference, because we really want to rely on the PIF and on our territories to have the input of the Pacific, the PIF leaders for the UNOC conference in 2025. And we also discussed a little bit this so-called Indo-Pacific strategy. We know that lots of Pacific countries do not understand this concept, and they prefer to have a focus on the Pacific, which we understand. At the same time, what we explained is that those strategies were adopted not really because of strategic terms and new ways of thinking, but just because we needed to have a positive focus, which started like 25 years ago or 20 years ago, and to have some budgetary lines. So, for example, it's because, and it's thanks to our Indo-Pacific strategy that we have managed to obtain an augmentation of our contribution to humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, both at the French and European Union level. It is thanks to this Indo-Pacific strategy, the French one and the European Union one, that we managed to increase by 5 our development aid in the Pacific. So it's mostly an instrument. And I mentioned that to him, to President Brotherson, so that they understand that it's this Indo-Pacific strategy is not anything hostile, but really something to be able to mobilize funds to work more operationally in the region.
So was he wanting or calling for it to be more Pacific focused instead of extending to the Indo-Pacific region?
No, he was really listening to everything, and I mean, my understanding of the meeting was that he was happy to have a new interlocutor in the region, the Pacific ambassador, and to devise strategies together. That's the thing, and that's really the aim of my appointment here, is to do things together.
And in the theme of doing things together, did you discuss independence? How do you see independence playing out?
Independence is not my job. It's not my job. This is the Ministry of Interior. It's the business. My job is really it's external relations. And because each of those territories have shared competencies with the French state on external relations, the aim is really to mutually reinforce each other and to use each other for the benefit of all.
Pacifica actors dominate the big screen in Taika Waititi's latest film, Next Goal Wins. The movie is based on the true story of American Samoa's football team and their journey to the 2011 FIFA World Cup qualifiers. Once dubbed the worst soccer team in the world following an infamous 31-0 loss to Australia in 2001, the team aspire to score at least one goal in the 2011 qualifiers. A private premiere was held last night at the Newmarket Event Cinemas in Auckland. Tiana Haxton went along.
The cinema was packed as eager moviegoers lined up for the first viewing of Next Goal Wins here in Aotearoa. Mingling with the crowd were 3 of the stars, Oscar Kitely, David Fane and Semu Filippo. Kitely plays the role of Tavita, the beloved president of the American Samoa football team. He is proud to see the film finally reach the big screen.
I'm feeling relieved and glad that it's just coming out. You know, we shot it in the before times, before the world went crazy with COVID. There was a lot of times where I wondered whether it would come out, and it has 4 years later. So I'm just excited and relieved. And this is Hollywood level, you know, and this is Taika.
Portraying demoted local coach Ace is David Fane. He was moved by the support of the Pacific Islands community in attendance at the premiere. Fane says the community has a strong inbuilt love and respect for each other.
If one does well, we all do well. We're a small portion of anywhere in the world. And yet here we are, all of us, cheering on the fact that you have all this brownness on film. And that's the most amazing thing, you know? And you don't have to be Samoan to be proud, but you do have to be Pacific Islander to know how important this is. The people matter. Islanders matter. Our stories matter.
Speaking about director Taika Waititi, Fame says that he is changing the narrative for brown stories, paving the way for how Pacific Islanders are represented in film.
You know, Taika, he's a mate, but he also is a person that just wants to change how we perceive this part of the world. It's simple. And he said, day by day, we can do it.
Samu Filippo is grateful for the opportunity to act alongside some big Pacifica names. He plays a local cop turned soccer player, recruited just a few weeks before the team heads to the World Cup qualifiers. Filippo shared how proud he is as a Pacific Islander to have been casted in Next Goal Wins.
Oh, as a Polynesian practitioner in this field, I'm just overwhelmed to be able to tell our stories and being given the opportunity by Taika and the team. I'm quite honoured and privileged to be on this side of it, or working with Dave and Oscar to tell our stories, because our stories are amazing, and there's not many of us. There's not many of us in this world, and I think there's something that we can actually work on in regards to our stories to be told by our people.
The film will grace New Zealand cinemas in 2 weeks' time on the 7th of December. Filippo is encouraging the Pacific Islands community to watch the film and enjoy the wholesome story.
I'm just real happy that a lot of people get to see this, and especially our people. Our Polynesian people, I hope you love this one, because this one's for you. Love you all.
While the American Samoa team did not qualify for the 2011 World Cup, the film scored goals of its own on Aotearoa soil. There were 3 packed cinemas full of laughter on premiere night, combating the initial harsh reviews from American movie critics.
That's Pacific Waves for today. To listen back, head over to rnzi.com/programs. We're also on Apple, Spotify and iHeartRadio podcasts. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, Tō whā soifua.